Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas. My name is Eddie Rivkin. I'm joined, as always, by my dear friend Joe Payne from the Las Vegas Advisor. This episode, we're going to talk a little trade deadline. The Golden Knights didn't have an awful lot of salary cap space to work with, but somehow they managed to A, fill a need that they had, and B, keep it under the cap with something like $34,000 to spare. And they got help from I guess you would say, the most unlikeliest of dance partners, the San Jose Sharks. So what do you think of the newest third line Golden Knight?
Well, before we get into that, when you say they got help, Doug Wilson, the general manager of San Jose, when he was asked, why would you help a division rival with that your team has a lot of hate for? And he said, if I didn't do it, there was going to be another team that was going to do it, and we get those draft picks. So I guess that's a smart move by Doug Wilson. He picks up basically he absorbed 25% of the new guy Janmark's salary. Yep. and got two draft picks from it, I believe, or one.
No, he just got a fifth. I think he got a fifth.
And then he gave up the defenseman,
right.
DeSimone.
Right.
Which is kind of unusual. I mean, it stays with which is kind of strange. I mean, when we talked about how there was going to have to be a lot of, I don't know how to put this, a lot of creativity to try to get a new body on the roster without
losing
going over with staying under the salary cap. And what they did is Chicago sent Janmark to San Jose, kept 50%. Then San Jose quickly turned around and sent Janmark to Vegas, kept 25% of the salary. So Vegas is only on the hook for, I think, $560,000, which gets them, like you said, within $34,000 of the Bettman salary cap. And they made this might be, in hindsight, obviously the Stone trade was a big trade. It worked out good for them. This trade might be the piece that really I don't want to say completes this roster, but solidifies this roster, that they have four workable lines that they can roll in the playoffs. And you and I both know, as anybody who's been around hockey, when you go through a possible 28-game playoff grind, you're going to need all four lines to contribute. And prior to the trade deadline, the Knights were not getting that. At times, they were just getting one line contributing. They were struggling. I mean, in Fleury's last 6 games, 4 of those games that he played, they only scored 1 goal. In one game, they scored 2. In the other game, they scored 3. Last night, he finally got
some run support.
He got some support last night. And it was funny because when you saw the first LA goal that went in off White Cloud's skate, you can see Fleury was visibly upset, because I think he was thinking, oh no, I can't afford to give up too many goals because I haven't been getting any to work with. And then they just exploded. I mean, the Pacioretty goal was, I felt bad for Quick, but
shit happens, brother.
Yeah, it took a fortuitous bounce, so to speak.
Right. But they said after the game, they said the ice was terrible. That's right. They don't often talk about that, but it's a building that houses 3 teams, 2 basketball teams and a hockey team, and it's getting a little bit warmer in California. And they said the ice was kind of shitty.
But you know what? And being a Ranger fan for all those years, the ice at Madison Square Garden for many years was always one of the worst in the league. But it's the worst for both teams, and the ice is bad for both teams. So, but then the Golden Knights are clearly the better team compared to Los Angeles, compared to Anaheim,
and San Jose,
and
Arizona.
Lately, Arizona is funny because, speaking of deadline, Arizona, who was vying for the last playoff spot, did nothing at the trade deadline. Are they waving the white flag?
Pretty well. I don't know if they're waving the white flag. They just said, if we get there, this is the way we're going to go. But for the Golden Knights, they picked up a guy who was difficult to play against when he was in Dallas last year. The fit is that he's a north-south player, and he's got a ton of speed. Yes, he can play the PK. Yes, he can play on the power play as well, right? He's had some time in Chicago, played with Patty Kane on the one line in Chicago. Um, Considering where they were and what they were up against, I have to say they did as good as they could do.
Yeah.
There was no blockbuster. This was the slowest trade deadline in 20 years. The biggest trade of the day was the Capitals and the Red Wings at the very end. But for the Golden Knights, we've talked about since the very beginning, secondary scoring. What the hell is the third line going to look like? Cody Glass, this person, that person. This is now, it's certainly, and not being a homer, it this looks like the right fit for the third line. Tomas Nosek is the best $1 million salary cap in the NHL. We mentioned it last time. I'm going to stick to it again. He just keeps filling the net. But him and Tuck and it's a solid piece now. They're as close to loaded for bear as they're going to be. They've got Keegan Colasar, who's injured. Ryan Reeves is on LTIR. It's retroactive, so he's probably going to miss another 5 or 6 games. But as constructed, the Golden Knights did what they did what they could do. They filled an absolute obvious need. They needed to firm up and have a top 9 forwards as opposed to a top 6. And we'll see what's going on with Tuck and Noshik, and then whatever we get from Carrier, from the meat grinders.
Eddie, do you think the and I thought about this, and I'm not really sure if my thinking is correct here. Do you think the Reeves LTIR was just to give them additional cap space?
They didn't they did. First of all, the answer to your question is no. They didn't use it. They didn't put them on LTIR until after the trade deadline. So I thought the same thing. I'm like, why would you announce it 3 hours after the window closed? Did you not know 3 hours before that he was going to go on LTIR? The other thing is that even with LTIR, he becomes eligible before the end of the season. So they're immediately in the cap crunch. If he would have been on LTIR till the end of the season, the salary cap ends at the end of the regular season. It's whatever you can do. But the timing seemed a bit odd for the announcement that he was going on LTIR.
Very odd. And that's what at first I thought it was just a contract thing that they were playing with the numbers, so to speak, to squeeze in under the cap, because you can't. How much closer can you get than 34,000? I mean, I think Washington. I looked at Cap Friendly. I don't know if this is a misprint, but according to the Washington Capitals, they are within $10 of their cap limit. Is that even possible?
Well, listen, guys smarter than us that do math better than us figure these kind of things out. So I would say, all in all, for the trade deadline, I mean, it has the potential to be huge, because
Go ahead. We're only going on. We're going on what with Mattias with one game only. I mean, yes, the Knights. Keep in mind they played the LA Kings last night, so they weren't playing the Minnesota Wild or the St. Louis Blues or the Colorado Avalanche.
Right, but I'm not talking about them. I'm not talking about last night's game. I'm talking about his track record as an NHL player and the kind of game that he plays and everything like that. We can't do anything about the schedule. We can't do anything about who they played last night when he just got in. But what we do know is stylistically, he fits the Vegas Golden Knight mold. He's fast. He plays a north-south game, which is what Pete DeBoer wants. He can kill penalties and he can play on the power play. So, the pundits have been saying Colorado, Vegas, Colorado, Vegas, Colorado, Vegas. You and I have talked about that. Colorado is a much better matchup for the Golden Knights than seemingly Minnesota is, right? Minnesota 10-2-2, something like that. For whatever reason, Minnesota has the Golden Knights number. We know when they play the Avalanche that there's going to be 2 styles of a game, right? The first style of game is Vegas can't gap up through the neutral zone, and it's going to be a shootout, and they're probably going to lose. The second kind of game is it's going to be much more like a playoff game where the ice is at a premium and the bigger, stronger, meaner, nastier, more physical Golden Knights are more likely to win those games. You can divide the series at 3-3 or 3-2-1, 0-1, whatever it is. But you can look at those games as far as the complexion of the game and see which games Colorado won were the wide open ones, and
Right.
the games that the Golden Knights won were the muck and grind and type of game. Even last night on the NHL Network, they were talking a little bit about it, and Kevin Weeks said, "Listen, it's 200 by 85 feet until the end of the regular season. Then it gets down to about 150 by 50, and when it gets down to that, don't count the Golden Knights out." And
And what I was gonna say is that what the Golden Knights have is their, I don't want to say ace in the hole, is that if they keep the games close and get it into overtime, they don't have to deal with the shootout,
right, huge,
which is
massive,
huge for both goaltenders, because we know Fleury is good in shootouts, and Robin Leonard is
It's not
literally the worst. He's the worst in the whole NHL
right.
as far as shootout percentage. So he's an imposing force and size, and but he's just not quick enough when somebody comes in on a breakaway. So getting the games, you don't want the games getting to overtime. I mean, it's exciting for the fans, but it's nerve-wracking at the same time.
Sure.
But that's a little bit of a ace in the hole, having goaltenders up Fleury and Leonard's Carroll in the net during overtime as opposed to a shootout. And Leonard's even said this, he would not be opposed to being taken out of the game in a shootout and having Fleury come in. But
wouldn't that be something? That'd be the first time that ever got done. Could you imagine if they tried it in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Boy, oh boy, the pundits would lose their heads.
Well, they would.
It'd explode.
I think in a regular season game, the Boris should just try that once,
just to see.
Yeah, I mean, if it's close in the third period, tell Fleury,
stretch.
Yeah, just start stretching out a little bit. Go down the tunnel and start stretching.
Yeah, loosen up a little bit.
You remember in the old days, you and I can talk about the old days. If you changed the goaltender, you were able to your shooters on your team. The game stopped
for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, they peppered the goaltender with shots to warm them up. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. So Fleury would have to be going in ice cold. But what do you got to lose? Because you're probably not winning in the shootout with Robin in net.
No, probably not. So there's 14, 15 games left. 2 versus the Avs on the 26th and 28th, which are probably, they're pretty much the centerpiece. Coming down the stretch, the Avs have a much easier schedule. They basically have what the Golden Knights started out with in the first 6 weeks. It was a quick trip to the cupcake store through Anaheim, San Jose, and Arizona. Well, going down the stretch, the Golden Knights have St. Louis and Minnesota, and Colorado has Anaheim, San Jose, and
the last 5 games that Colorado play are against all the bottom teams of the West, and the last 5 games that Vegas plays, 2 are against St. Louis. 2 against St. Louis in T-Mobile, and these are the 2 games that may pose a problem based upon past history. Is they have 2 games in Minnesota, and their last game of the year is against Arizona. So the 2 games, the 4 most important games, in my opinion, is the games 26 and 28 against Colorado, and then the 2 games against Minnesota in Minnesota. The Vegas Golden Knights are probably going to have to win at least 3 of those 4 games to even consider finishing in first. And first is paramount, in my opinion, because the West is probably the toughest division to get out of when you look at all 4 divisions, because there's 3 solid teams in the West besides the Vegas Golden Knights. So getting out of the West is going to be hard for anyone, even Colorado. They're going to have to get by the Vegas, St. Louis, or Minnesota. So all 4 teams, the 4 teams that are going to make the playoffs in the West, as long as there's not a miracle happening, which will be, Colorado, Vegas, Minnesota, St. Louis. It's going to be an attrition to get out of the West. And who knows? We don't really know who they play once we get down to the Final 4. Do we play an East Coast team? Do we play one of the teams from the North? I don't think that's been decided yet, has it?
I think we asked Steve that
Steve
on the
Cobb.
last, and I think he said it was being done by points, high versus low, two versus the two middle.
Oh, okay.
But still,
Interesting.
so the path to the Final Four, do they have to? Obviously, the best chance they have is to finish first.
Yes. Only because of home ice advantage, and hopefully,
Well, in avoiding Minnesota in the first round.
and avoiding
Theoretically.
Well, yeah, but also having the home ice advantage, and hopefully by the time we get into the playoffs, and this is all based upon when Vancouver is going to finish their schedule, because there's probably going to be a whole bunch of days off waiting for Vancouver to finish their 56-game schedule. Maybe by then
they canceled another game today.
Yeah,
it was supposed to be 19 games in 31 days. That's ridiculous. I mean, at some point, they've got to call it off.
And even JT Miller, a player, said that
Huge.
it's ridiculous to think that we can be ready to play based upon one practice and one skate to just get right back into while these other teams have been playing. And he's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
The quality of the game, and it's being unfair to Vancouver to expect them to get up to speed that quickly.
No.
I'm not sure what's going to happen. Is it possible that Vancouver just doesn't finish out the season? Is that possible?
Well, I mean, here's what we know for an absolute fact. They're on a hard stop date. They have to be finished by the 22nd of July, right? Isn't the opening ceremonies of the Olympics are on NBC. So that's the hard out date. So with that in mind, how long can they string up? Maybe the North Division, at some point, those last few Vancouver games become no contests, and it becomes a points percentage.
Similar to what they did in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I mean, you can't expect these guys to play 19 games in 30 days to 31 days. That's retarded. With no disrespect to retarded, that's retarded, right? I mean, once in a while, having 3 games in 4 nights, 6 back-to-backs over 56. Sure, that's 19 and 31. There's no way that they can be competitive when it gets to the last 10, 8 games, something like that. So the league has a serious,
Scheduling problem.
predicament. I mean, they can string it out, but if they let the North go 8 days past the prescribed or the aforementioned end of the season, that means the other 12 teams are sitting on their thumbs, right? Just practicing in theory for a week. It's not really fair.
Okay, but let me just go back to a point you just made. Do you think the NHL is going to really worry about when the opening day of the Summer Olympics is?
It ain't the NHL. It's not the NHL that's worried. It's NBC. The television rights for the Olympics cost NBC versus the NHL contract for TV rights versus NBC.
Yeah, but the Olympics, from what I understand, are going to be on the major parent station of NBC, where
they're going to be they're full spread. They're going on everything. There's a million events going on. They're going to be across everything. USA Today, NBCSN, everything.
Okay, but Eddie, here's my position. We've had in the past watched Olympic events on a delay. So I mean, I understand what you're saying here, but I think that it's not an easy get around, but there's a get around where you broadcast the NHL games live, and you do an event like the 200-meter swim is on a delay. I mean,
I understand what you're saying, but your premise is wrong. More people care about the Olympics than the NHL.
So more. Okay, wait.
Your premise is back. Your premise is backwards.
No. So you're saying that more people care about a water polo match than an NHL playoff game? I disagree with you. 100.
You can pick a water polo match, but you can't say track and field or women's gymnastics or the U.S. women's national soccer team or any,
But okay, you're talking about 3 events out of 300 events.
okay, but you picked water polo. What? Don't pick on the water polo guys. They got to swim around in those little skinny little things. Leave the water polo guys alone. I'm telling you that that NBC paid billions with a big old B for the Olympic rights, and they paid millions for the NBC rights.
And NBC will figure it out.
I will bet you a pizza on my
Here we go.
cheat meal for July when I approach my 100-pound weight loss goal that the Stanley Cup will be awarded before the first event of the Olympics.
Before opening ceremony?
No, opening ceremony ain't the beginning of the Olympics.
Do you know what the audience is like for opening ceremony of the Olympics?
Okay, I'll make that.
It's a lot more than water polo, that's for sure.
Listen, just because you can't wear a Speedo, don't pick on the water polo guys, pal. All right.
Whoever's watching right now, if they were to vote, who would be more appealing in a Speedo? I'm winning hands down, by the way.
Without question, because
Okay, so don't play the Speedo with me, buddy.
Well, listen. So are you taking the bet? I say before opening ceremonies, the Stanley Cup's awarded.
Will you wear a Speedo to the pizzeria if I'm right?
I'll wear a bathrobe and swimming goggles.
What are you, some mafia don wearing a bathrobe?
I'll be like Joey Bananas walking down the street with a cigar in a
bathrobe. Mafia don. I used to walk down Mulberry Street with the bathrobe, or trying to let the FBI think that he's totally out of whack, and it's like, just leave him alone, don't bother him anymore.
All right, enough of this crazy talk. Riley Smith is still here.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't move the core.
No, I know. Okay, I was wrong.
That's okay.
I thought if they were going to bring in a guy like Getzlaff, which was a possibility, and Getzlaff, I even admitted, he told his agent that I'll waive my no trade clause to come to Vegas because I really want to go to a team that has got a legitimate shot at winning the Stanley Cup.
But what else did he say?
And he's close to, Anaheim and Las Vegas are close.
But what did he say? What did he say this morning?
I didn't hear what he said this morning.
He said it all depended on the return to Anaheim.
Because he's going to go back there.
It's all what's going back the other way from the Vegas goal. Everybody said, "Oh, Getzlaff." Listen, forget Getzlaff. I'll take my shot with this young kid, right? So
if they brought Getzlaff over, that doesn't help the third line.
No, doesn't help him at all.
Because he fits into the top 6. So the third line problem still exists.
Right.
Janmark, obviously at this point, and like I said, it's only a 1-game sample. He looked terrific. He's not afraid to go to the front of the net.
Nope.
And
I read a stat where his goals are average. The average distance of his goals is like under 12 feet.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, all dirty goals.
Okay.
Listen, it's been what Pete DeBoer has been preaching: dirty area, dirty area, dirty area. They don't do it against Minnesota, they lose. They do it against everybody else, they win. Right? So there's a log jam. Could be a bit of a log jam. Right? So if the
you're talking about the third and fourth line log jam?
Yeah, third and fourth line.
Well, I think Yurko comes out. I think DeBoer will prefer Reeves over Yurko. But the third line, I think, will remain with Nosek and Tuck and Janmark. And I think the fourth line is where it's going to be moving parts, so to speak. And I think
now you've got to move Waugh down.
Yeah.
Right?
You move. I think you move Waugh down against Minnesota, but you insert Reeves back into the lineup against Colorado because you don't want to get into a run and gun game with Colorado. You want to get into you want to play a physical game against the Avs, and you probably want to play a physical game against St. Louis. St. Louis, there are a couple players on St. Louis. David Perron is one who does not like to get hit.
Right.
Okay. And so I think the only series, potential series that where you have to probably match speed is with Minnesota. So maybe Reeves doesn't play in a Minnesota series, but Reeves will play if he's healthy. In my opinion, DeBoer will put him in against the Avs and against St. Louis.
Okay, so are we going as far as to say that Keegan Colasar and Cody Glass are now on the taxi squad unless there's an injury or until the Black Aces to start practicing? I mean, is
I
this how
don't
we're
know.
going?
No, I don't know about Colsa, but I will tell you this: the addition to Janmark pretty much gave Cody Glass a one-way ticket to the Henderson Silver Knights. I think that's where he's gonna wind up. He'll be once the season ends. Once they get into the playoffs, they're allowed to carry unlimited amount. There's no cap space to carry a whole bunch of guys. He'll come
Right.
back to the team then. But and you and I have had this discussion before. Cody Glass has had two opportunities to make things right for himself. And they when Stevenson was suspended, he got to play with the big boys, and he was pretty much invisible.
Right.
And he's done nothing to raise his stock at all. And whether it's a point of is he just developing a lot slower than anticipated? What I think the problem is he doesn't fit in with in between the meat grinders.
No.
He's not that type of player. He needs skilled forwards. He needs guys with soft hands around him. And let's be honest, Carrier and Reeves and Colasar do not have soft hands.
Not the softest hands on the
No,
club.
they're lumberjacks,
Yeah.
But so Cody Glass's development,
So he needs games in Henderson. So barring the injury, the intention was that they were going to send him down for 6 or 7 games, and then the suspension happened and he come right back up. But the intention was, and GMKM said, we want to go down. We want him to go down there, want him to get top line minutes, we want the young man to get his confidence back, right? So Colasar gets healthy. So are you saying the meat grinders is now Wah in between Carrier and Reeves?
and Colasar. I think those four will be.
That's the makeup of
That's
the
the
meat
makeup of that,
grinders.
Yeah.
And Cody Glass goes back to Henderson until, well,
not only just Cody Glass, I think that Krebs has a chance of coming up before Cody Glass does.
listen, I've been on that kid's tip since the beginning of the season, and everybody said I was out of my mind.
No, he's just lighting it up.
He's a better, has a better offensive upside than Cody Glass. And the other thing that we got a significant apple for is there's no Memorial Cup this year.
Yes.
Again this year. So when the regular season is over for
He'll
the
be free.
WHL, Krebs can skip. He can literally become almost a taxi squad guy, basically.
Right,
Try and play his way in.
but before you start waving pom-poms to Krebs, keep in mind that you're comparing Cody Glass playing against NHL players as opposed to Krebs playing against players who haven't made the big show. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Unquestionably, that it's
Yeah.
not a
Let's
fair comparison.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here.
But if we look at both of those young men in their junior careers leading up to Cody Glass's audition in the show, Peyton Krebs has more of an offensive upside.
Cody Glass has been hurt multiple times.
Right.
Often,
So I think that there's going to be a whole lot of interesting things going on, even if certainly barring injury. Obviously, when injuries happen, you have to scramble to figure out what's best for the club. But like we've said multiple times before, almost every button that Pete DeBoer pushes has pretty much been the right button. He seems to have the magic blender to get the most out. When they lost those games in a row and they weren't playing well, there wasn't any panic, right? When Mark Stone the first captain of the Golden Knights, gets on TV and he goes, listen, I can't go 10 games without scoring a goal. These guys are acutely aware, of what's going on around them. And it has nothing to do with outside noise. They probably put themselves under 1,000 times more pressure than any of us could ever exert. So, it's a good thing he scored 2 games in a row. Tuck came out of his sleep.
Along with Alex Tuck too.
Right. Alex Tuck came out of his slumber a little bit. Nosik's the hottest guy on the team, right? And before Kolasar was hurt, Kolasar was what, 5 points in 6 games or 5 points in 7 games, something like that. And listen, it's a guy who could have 8 goals by now if he could just finish a little bit.
Yeah. And
So
Stevenson scored last night, finally. After
you know why? Because he didn't try and deke the goalie.
But the truth of the matter is, on his goal, he literally blew by 8 players.
Yes. Yeah, he lapped them.
Yeah, he lapped them like they were like standing still.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Speed kills. Listen, I think Chandler Stevenson could go down in the book of Golden Knights history as the greatest trade ever for a 5th round pick.
For a 5th round pick, obviously.
I mean, just the fact that he's up and down the lineup, right? And now he seems settled in. If they got a legitimate 1C to play between, and not saying Chandler Stevens is not legitimate, but you know what I mean, a premier first line center.
Well, if they got Getzlaf, he most likely would have been the 1C, and Stevenson would have dropped down to 3C.
I never thought Getzlaf was viable. I mean, I don't think he's a viable fit, because the thing that Stevenson brings to the first line is he can push everybody back and give more room toward the top of the circles and off the half wall for Pacioretty and Stone, right? Getzlaf's not pushing anybody back.
Well, physically he can, but
physically he can.
Yeah, he's a big boy. Physically.
But he's not gonna be on the zone entry. You give the puck to Stevenson, you let him get up to 21 or 22 miles an hour, right? Faster than the speed limit in the subdivision where I live.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And he forces the D back.
Right.
Right. I mean, the premise that we've been working with when we were talking about the power play was the same thing. Why don't you give the puck to him and Alex Tuck and let them skate, let them push the box back, instead of having 4 guys, 1 in the neutral zone and 3 standing up like picket fences at the blue line, stopping their entries. Bump it over their head and let those 2 guys chase it.
Speaking of the power play, I know you're okay with this. What do you think about the move of switching sides, getting Pacioretty over to the left wing and putting Marchessault where Pacioretty has been a sniper at? Well, Pacioretty
I don't think
Pacioretty, no matter where you put him.
I think if Pacioretty's skates are on the ice, he's a threat to score.
Yeah.
So I don't think he cares where he is, right? They always they were leaning heavily to the right as you face the net. The power play was sort of tilted to the right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So they move him to the left.
It's given, but the moving Pacioretty over to the left is kind of giving a little bit more time and space to Marchessault on the right also.
I'm going to get a lot of shit for this. I don't like Marchessault on PP1.
You don't.
It's the same move. It's the same curl toward the center, looking for the pass into the center of the box. It's the same loop around, shoot for the short side. He's a gamer and he's tough, and I hope he kicks that guy on Arizona's ass for low bridging Stone at the end of the last game.
You're talking about Garland?
Yeah. Garland. But you
want Marchessault to take care of Garland?
Marchessault already said it's going to have to. The little guy's going to have to take matters in his own hands. He said it in his in the post game.
There's going to be I think there's going to be a line to get at Garland.
But Garland's 5'9", 160. That's half of 90% of the Golden Knights.
Yeah, they are a big deal. The Golden Knights are a pretty big team.
Right. The only legit guy in the super flyweight division to get some redemption is Marchessault. who has no problem. Listen, I don't have any doubt that he'll happy to punch Garland in the face a whole bunch of times for that low hit on
He
Stone.
is, Marchessault he's feisty. He's like that little kid in the schoolyard
Yeah,
who like you didn't want to screw around with. He just, he's little, but he's as tough as nails. And Marchessault he's got a lot of spunk, Marchessault.
yeah. But I don't like him on PP1. I see the
So
same move.
who would you put on the right wing in PP1?
I told you what I would do. I would put the biggest tree that I could put in front of the net. Now remember, I grew up in Detroit watching the Red Wings, where Tomas Holmstrom scored a couple hundred goals from inside of 3 feet. He was just a pillar in front of the net. They have so much talent, Joe, that they can roll out on the power play. They can make if you are the other team and you put Mount Reeves in front of the goalie, you've effectively decimated the box.
But you don't want to. You don't think that Tuck would be a better option than Reeves?
I think Tuck's a very fine option. I think that Reeves is tougher to move than Tuck.
And like you've said when we were talking to Steve Kopp, Tuck goes to the front of the net, but then he vacates it and goes in. He leaves the front of the net.
Yeah, because he's more
he
of
wants he wants to pursue the puck. He's got that pursuit where Reeves realizes his strong suit is his size and strength, and he realizes, hey, if I stay in front of the net, the board will keep me on the power play.
Listen, he can cause havoc all just by standing there. He'll get his share of deflections, right? But the havoc is that they're not going to leave him standing alone there. It forces the box closer to the goal.
Right.
Okay. Which gives Shea Theodore and the Marty party up there, instead of being at the blue line, now they're closer to the top of the circles because the box is smaller and closer to the net. Right. Now, Alex Tuck is fine there, but Alex Tuck doesn't like to be cross-checked, and he doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas you say Revo, net, and Revo jumps over the boards. He doesn't try anything fancy. He skates right to the front of the net. He puts the brakes on his skates, and he says, "Okay, guys, move me if you can."
And Colasar is 1A, 1B,
100%.
Yeah.
He's
You
Reeves.
can put Colasar on the second power play unit, and
Yes.
he does exactly what you send Reeves out there to do.
Right. So if you put those two guys on a PP1 and PP2, you have plenty of snipers for the other 8 guys.
Right.
Right. You got Pietrangelo and X. You can put a forward, and then you've got Shea Theodore and Martinez on PP2, and you've got a slew of forwards that you can put on the half walls. Right. But I ain't making a couple $1 million, and I'm not coaching the team. I'm just saying that they're still 25th, I think, in the NHL.
24 to 20. Oh, I got to plug my computer in. Hold on.
Uh-oh.
I saw my light flash and I forgot to plug it in before we started. So
yeah, they're still 24th or 25th in the league. It's looked better with Pacioretty on the what we call the far wall, based on where the camera is. But it's going to have to be better. I mean, the amount of penalties that get called in the playoffs, as we both know, the games are a lot tighter, and they're going to need special teams. Obviously.
Actually, I saw a statistical poll that actually showed that there were less penalties called in the playoffs than the regular season. They're small. I mean, the difference was small. But I'm going to tell you what I personally think the problem with the Vegas Golden Knight power play, besides their zone entry, is Shea Theodore has not really been producing as far as power play goes. And I'm not really sure what's going on there. Because he's usually a pretty good sniper from the point on the power play. Does he have just one power play goal the whole season?
I think that's right. I think that the problem with the power play is they think too much.
and they're taking
They want to
not
make
only
they want to make the ESP, they want to make the NHL Tonight
highlight
highlight reel
yes,
goal every single night, where it's a tap in that you and I could put in from 2 feet, instead of pounding the goalie like pink veal and getting
right,
the ugly goals.
exactly.
They still they're still a little too fancy. And I listen, you can fancy is one word, unselfish is another. And in this case, they're fairly similar in the context that we're talking about. But they give up. It seems like they just give up some shot opportunities that are just grade A scoring chances to make the extra pretty pass. I mean, it was great to see Nosek last night on the 2-on-1. Instead of trying to make the pass, just stick it in the short side.
Yeah, just
Right,
buried right over the
right.
glove.
And
Right over
in the
glove.
game, before, they did the same thing. I want to see more this pound the puck. Right, you're the biggest team in the NHL height wise. You're the biggest team in the NHL weight wise. Right, get in there and start pounding some people.
You know, play, as you say, play to your strength.
Yeah,
If your strength is physicality, play to your physicality.
right.
Don't, you know, they make all these fancy perimeter passes from the face-off circle to the point across.
Yeah, it's time to get popcorn. Shoot the fucking
Yeah.
puck. Let's go.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
Fine, it's all great, tape to tape. But
Lovely.
in the NHL, you're not going to score a goal from
No.
the perimeter unless you have somebody like either Reeves or Colasar or Tuck sitting in front, taking the goaltender's eyes away from him.
Right.
Plain and simple.
I agree 100%. So
Then you owe me a pizza and a Speedo.
bathroom. I got and we'll film it for a future episode. How's that?
Well, we might get a sponsorship from Speedo.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. So they're picking up the points they need to pick up. They got 2 wins in Arizona. They got 2 in LA. These games against the not so, they're important. They need these 2 wins against in Anaheim starting tomorrow.
Man, if they don't leave Anaheim with 4 points, they're in trouble. When I say they're in trouble as far as finishing first, because Colorado is just 17 of 20 wins, and they just don't lose. And but here's a little segment here. Grubauer's down with COVID. He's going to be out at least 2 weeks. And last night, I don't know if you watched the game, it looked like
Dubnyk got dinged pretty
Dubnyk
good.
One off the shoulder. And
it looked exactly like the shot that we
Panda
thought that Panda took.
Exactly.
That led to him going. You don't get a concussion being hit on the collarbone, but it was the same shot, almost in the same part of the body.
Yeah.
And Dubnyk, also a gigantic goaltender, Leonard almost sized, right? He went down in a heap, and then a little bit later, he took one.
That goal.
Did you see it from behind the goal line? He took it. It looked like he took it on the side or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So,
St.
yes.
Louis made it close. St. Louis made it close. They were now 4-1, but they closed the gap, but they just fell a tad bit short. But yeah, and like you have said previously in the previous podcast, that they couldn't run Grubauer into the ground. They needed to get a backup. They did. Now Grubauer's down with COVID, and if Dubnyk is hurt, Colorado may be in trouble here.
Listen, they were in trouble last year. That's why they got bounced.
Yeah.
Right. Doesn't matter. They
got knocked out in the first round, right?
If you're giving up 4 goals a game, it's hard to score 5 in the playoffs. I don't care if you're Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, or whoever. So it's going to be a very interesting, 2.5 weeks, pretty much.
Well, basically a little more. There's 14 games.
Right.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks.
So we're gonna keep running it down every couple of games. We got through the trade deadline just to start wrapping it up. I think the Golden Knights again did everything they could possibly do, given the fact that they had 1 card in their deck and 1 trick left in their magic box.
In poker they had a 1-outer.
Yep, and the 1-outer that they were able to get seems on paper, because we don't have enough of a test drive, right? Seems on paper to absolutely fill the need that not only you and I have been talking about, but the really smart guys who have to wear suits when they go on television have been talking about depth scoring, and so it's going to be fairly entertaining. Not fairly, it's going to be very entertaining, especially when Colorado comes a calling here in about 10 days.
26 and 28, baby.
So thanks everybody for subscribing. You can find us at youtube.com/C/Hockey Nights in Vegas with no spaces. And we'll put a link up, something like that, if you want to find the other episodes. We also have a couple surprises for you with the look of this fancy podcast that we do. We're gonna tighten it up and become more professional when we get to the playoff time.
Yeah, it's not gonna. The surprise is not gonna be Eddie in a Speedo. You can trust me on that one.
You can take that ticket right to the sport book and you can cash it. So
And-
thanks
and don't forget, like right down here, right where I'm pointing, there's that subscribe button. We would love for you to subscribe.
Like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. Otherwise, Joe's going to show up for the next podcast wearing a Speedo.
No.
And none of us want that. So thank you all for watching. We'll be back with you probably after the 2-game set against the Anaheim Ducks. And we'll make our way toward the Stanley Cup playoffs. Thanks again, everybody. We're out of here.